Dobar dan! Today we're reading Mickey the Pharmacist, or Why There is 29 Days in February. Are we all sitting comfortably? Then let's have a read. Mick is a pharmacist, although his family call him Mickey. He lives a very scheduled and peaceful life. He gets up in the morning, brushes his teeth, has breakfast and goes to work. He takes his car to work. Mickey has to drive through several intersections on his way to work. He is always very careful. When he arrives at his job, he stirs syrups, mixes powders, counts pills. Mickey starts work at 9 AM, but he leaves the house at precisely 8:36. He knows it takes him exactly 20 minutes to drive to work and another 4 to find a parking space. He also knows exactly how long he will wait at each traffic light. Mickey is very precise in everything. However, on the last day of February 28 to be precise, what happened was that the traffic light number 3 didn't work. Mickey waited there a whole 26 seconds longer than usually, and to make up for that, he set off recklessly, while the traffic light was still showing yellow. A Peter passed through the intersection on the yellow light from the other direction. They hadn't been driving fast, but they crashed anyway. That long chain of stopped vehicles stretched all the way to the sea. The buses that were just driving off the ferry were stuck halfway, half on the boat, half on the shore. The boats couldn't move now either. And so, in just an hour, everything stopped, unable to move. The traffic jam was spread all around the world. Everything was brought to a halt. No one worked, and no one arrived at the office. But not every single thing was at a standstill. The earth was still spinning. The day was going by. To bring things back to their place, and also so everything would go back to normal, people decided that the last car in that endless line should back up just a little, and then the one in front of it could go back up, and so it would go until it came to the intersection where it had all started. And so it went, and everything would have gone unnoticed had other things miraculously started twisting, turning and backing up too. Our pharmacist Mickey, who stirs the syrups and mixes the powders, has caused in the world all the offbeat encounters. There was a boy who couldn't brush his teeth. He had just got up when all the reversing started. And when he was about to start brushing his teeth, the toothpaste slipped back into its tube. There was no use in trying to explain to his parents what had happened. There was little chance anyone would ever believe him. Jerry was holding the toothpaste and brush. It had to be done. There was no way out. When all of a sudden the paste flew back in, this was his chance, he had no doubt. Another odd case was the one of little Martha. She would always keep her room tidy, but this time, when her mum entered her room, it was really a sight. Since everything was going backwards, the room kept scattering Martha's things all around. Oh my, can this be real? My room is now all messy and scattered. But when I left, I'm sure it was clear. Now it looks as though it's been battered. Some students' homework erased itself. The teacher would never believe in that excuse had there not been so many odd incidents. Without any help from a pencil or an eraser, letter by letter, the words disappeared. Timmy looked again, and the words weren't there. The 28th homework was all gone and cleared. The animals at the zoo behaved strangely too. The sea lions and fish swam backwards. Only the crabs moved forward. The strangest of incidents happened at the monkey's cage. A boy at the zoo made a new friend. A monkey. It was a generous one. He shared some bananas with his new chum. 6 and no less. Well, wasn't that fun? even the things that normally took a long time to change started reversing, which was all the more unusual. An elderly man with thinning grey hair went to his hairdresser to trim his moustache and the little hair he still had. But looking at his reflection in the mirror, he'd noticed his hair had grown a bit in the places it hadn't for a long time, and it was even a little darker. He squinted and then shook his head to clear his thoughts, but when he glanced back, he was even more surprised. His hair was black and his moustache bushy, just the way it used to be. In a small town on the coast, Johnny the painter had set up his easel and he was just finishing a landscape of seagulls, island fish, sea and the sun. He glanced at his palette to choose the colour he would use to paint the bird's wing. But when he looked back to his canvas, the bird was nowhere to be seen. He thought in confusion. He convinced himself that the bird was still only an idea that he had simply forgotten to actually paint. Well, it doesn't matter. I can colour in the fish jumping out of the sea and the boat rolling on the waves. He chose a colour from his palette and looked up towards the canvas. Neither the fish nor the boat were there. The sky and the sea were even more peculiar, since they seemed to be fading. Soon there was a blank canvas before him. Johnny sat down in amazement. Oh, what shall I do? He pondered all night, deciding at last to call his work white. Museums around the world were seized by greed. They wanted the painting a work of art indeed. Johnny kept silent. He was, after all, the only one who had a clue about the real author of the painting on the view. Not all things started going backwards on the 28th. Some were just twisted in a funny way. You could see dogs walking their owners and grandfathers being pushed on the swings by their grandchildren. Each and every passerby in the park that day froze and watched the funny sight, a grandfather in play. Is this real, what I see? Are my eyes lying to me? A dog is on the bench, carefree, his owner barking up a tree. Everything was twisting and turning that day, and people's brains weren't an exception. A cook decided to spend the afternoon trying to put together pieces of vegetables for a soup as if they were a jigsaw puzzle. He kept trying to assemble them into whole carrots, onions, cabbage and swede. Carrots weren't much of a problem, but chopped cabbage nearly drew him crazy. Instead of making a head of cabbage, he ended up with something that looked like a scarecrow. He sang as he did that. Chefs have always worked hard, chopping veggies all the time. Still, putting veggies back together, that's something really divine. It's not rare to see a child finish a whole box of chocolates, but here too, the effect of the unusual 28th could be seen. When Melita got some chocolates from her aunt, instead of eating them, she carefully re-wrapped all of them and put them away neatly into their box. The whole world turned into a stage for things becoming upside down and inside out. The thing is, no one could do what they were supposed to do. Everyone skipped a day of their everyday lives. The sages of the world held an urgent meeting to resolve this problem. After hours of consultation, calculation and contemplation, observing the stars and positions of the planets, the sages decided unanimously a case as odd as this one, or better yet, an incident, can only occur every 4 years. Their calculations even showed that it was only natural that such an incident should happen in every 4 years. There was only one thing to do: add an extra day in February. Since it already had fewer days than all the other months, this would give people enough time to catch up on all the things they didn't have enough time to do. So they introduced a new day, February the 29th. And so the story goes about how Mickey the pharmacist is the reason sages chose to have an extra day every 4 years. The next day, everything got back to its place. There weren't any traffic jams and everyone returned to their usual activities. Pharmacist Mickey was at his pharmacy as well, mixing something in his test tubes. He was smiling. He was glad the story got a happy ending and that he would have enough time to do what he was supposed to. After all, he did get an extra day. He also decided to drive more carefully in the future, because you can never know what a little recklessness could do. But who knows if he would manage that? We have to admit that although Mickey is very nice, he is actually quite a silly fellow. Thank you guys, I hope you enjoyed. Do widzenia.